3 chilling True Street stories of dangerous and creepy roommates. 3 days after I moved in, something unusual happened. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the hallway light turned on by itself. No power surge, no wind, just a soft click, followed by a low hum that seemed to settle into the walls. I stood there, blinking at the glow leaking under my door, wondering if this was just a quirk of an old building or something else entirely. The apartment complex was quiet, tucked between tall fir trees near the edge of town. I'd found the listing last minute after transferring to Southern Oregon University, and it felt like a lucky break. Rent was low, the neighborhood was calm, and my roommate, Leah, was easygoing. The kind of person who carried lavender in her bag and always kept her windows open to let the energy flow. She said the apartment had good bones. I wasn't so sure. There was something in the air, like the stillness after a question you're not ready to answer, not threatening, just watching. Leah had been there 2 months before me. She said the unit had once belonged to a woman named Madeline, who left suddenly one spring, mid-lease. Her plants, books, even her groceries were still in the apartment when she disappeared. Leah told it like a local ghost story odd, but nothing to lose sleep over. But certain things didn't feel like stories. Every evening, just after sunset, a quiet tapping started inside the living room wall. Not loud, just enough to make you pause a show, tilt your head, and wonder. Leah thought it was the plumbing settling. I was deliberate, rhythmic, as though someone or something was trying to be noticed, but not too quickly. One day, while sorting through a drawer in the kitchen, I found a photo wedged in the back behind the cutlery tray. It showed the apartment's hallway, but the wallpaper was older, faded, and there was a figure standing at the end of the hall, blurred, almost transparent. Their face was turned slightly, as if they'd just noticed the camera. On the back of the photo was a date, May 12, 2009. That night, I mentioned it to Leah. She didn't say much, only that May 12 was the day Madeline was last seen. We both sat quietly for a while after that, listening to the tapping begin again, this time a little closer. Leah started having strange dreams. She said they weren't frightening, just persistent. The same one every night. Standing in our hallway, hearing someone call her name from the ceiling vent. Not yelling, just calling, softly, like they were waiting. She didn't think much of it until she woke up one morning and found tiny leaves on her bedspread. Not from any plant we owned. They were dry, brittle, almost like they'd been pressed between pages for years. Neither of us had windows open that night. We tried to ignore it, kept the lights on longer, slept with the hallway door closed. But the energy in the apartment shifted. The stillness became heavier, more intentional. We stopped walking barefoot, started avoiding certain corners of the living room without knowing why. One evening, I found Leah standing in front of the closet at the end of the hall, just staring. She said she didn't remember going there. I opened it the next day. It was empty, except for a single folded note on the floor. The handwriting was unfamiliar, looping and neat. You're in the place where things are remembered. Not everything that leaves is gone. After that, the tapping stopped. But something else started. Just a gentle creaking from above us. A soft shuffle, like movement in a room that didn't exist. The landlord confirmed there was no unit above, just the roof. Yet every night, at the same time, the creaking returned, like someone pacing, like they were rehearsing something. And then, one morning, Leah wasn't in her room. Her phone was still on the charger. The lavender bundle on her nightstand was wilted, and in the middle of her neatly made bed was another note. This time, it only had one line. Room for one more. Leah was gone. No sign of struggle. Her room untouched. Her jacket still hanging by the door. And her car keys on the counter. I sat on the edge of her bed, trying to make sense of the silence. Outside, The sky was gray, heavy with Oregon mist. Inside, the apartment felt dimmer somehow, even though the lights were on. The note on her bed was cold to the touch, as though it had been pulled from somewhere much colder than this world. Room for one more. I read it again, pressing the edges flat against my knee. No handwriting like that in any notebook of Leah's. No ink smudge. Clean, precise, like it had waited to be found. I reported her missing. The local officer who visited was kind, quiet. He took my statement but seemed distracted, glancing toward the hallway more than once as if something pulled his attention without reason. Before leaving, he said something I haven't forgotten. This building's got a bit of history. Keep your doors locked. And don't go looking for things that don't want to be found. After that, the apartment changed. The light bulbs dimmed quicker. My phone lost signal in the kitchen. And every morning, I woke up with the faint scent of rainwater in my room, even when the windows were closed. A week passed. I stayed because I didn't know where else to go. Leah's parents hadn't heard from her either. Her social media accounts went still, like she had quietly stepped out of her life, leaving only a whisper behind. I kept her room exactly as it was, door closed, curtains drawn, but sometimes at night, I'd hear the softest shuffle coming from inside. Once, I caught a glimpse of the lamp turning off by itself. I told myself it was faulty wiring. I didn't believe it. One night, I had a dream, not the usual kind, not scattered. This one was too quiet, too real. I was standing in our hallway. All the lights were off except for one inside the closet at the end. I walked toward it, the floor colder with each step. When I opened the door, there was no closet, just a staircase leading down, carved from stone, lit by a faint yellow glow. I woke up before I could take a step. The next morning, I checked the closet. Still there, still empty, but the hardwood beneath it sounded hollow when I tapped it. That day, I didn't go to class. I stayed, pacing, rereading the old photo I had found, researching Maitland's name again. Nothing. It was like she had never existed outside place. That afternoon, I met Mr. Caldwell, the maintenance man. He'd worked in the complex for over 20 years. He remembered Maitland, said she was quiet, kept to herself. Then one day, the unit went dark. Same story as Leah. He told me something else, too. In 1997, the unit above ours had caught fire during renovations. 2 workers had been there. Only one made it out. The fire was blamed on faulty electrical wiring, but no one could explain the footprints found on the ceiling beams, away from the burn patterns. There was no longer an apartment above us, just the attic, sealed. The landlord had it boarded up and never reopened it. I asked if I could see it. He refused. His hands shook slightly when I mentioned the noise. Back home, I sat on the floor and listened. Right after sunset, it started again. Not pacing this time. Just a single knock. Then a pause. Then 2 more. Like someone using a code they assumed I'd know. I knocked back. Once, then silence. That night, the dream returned. This time, I stepped onto the stone stairs. The air grew colder. I descended. I saw Leah at the bottom. Facing away, her hand pressed against a wall covered in framed photos. I called out, but she didn't turn. When she finally looked over her shoulder, her eyes were not afraid. They were calm, still, as if she understood something I hadn't yet. I woke up with my hands stained with dust, a fine layer, like ash. In the hallway, the closet door was ajar. I didn't remember opening it. The tapping began again, this time on my bedroom window. 3 soft knocks. There was no balcony outside, just open air. The window was still shut, locked from the inside, but the knocking had been real. It wasn't wind. It wasn't a branch. I stood still in the dark for a long time, listening, breathing slow. Nothing followed. No footsteps. No second knock. Just the silence of a room that felt like it was watching me back. The next morning, I walked to the edge of the building and looked up toward the attic space. There was no ledge outside my window. Nothing anyone could stand on. Still, I checked again for any possible explanation. Something simple. Something rational. I found none. I didn't go back inside right away. I walked through the neighborhood for hours. The autumn chill kept my mind sharp. I stopped at the library on Main Street and searched through old news archives. It took time. Nothing came up under Leah's name or Maitland's. I tried the building's address. That led me to something different. In 1973, the building was listed as a private boarding house. A woman named Lenora Bennett ran it. She had 5 long-term tenants. One by one, they each moved out over the course of a year, citing strange noises and feelings of being watched. The final tenant left in December of that year and never gave a forwarding address. Lenora stayed behind. The record said she vanished 3 weeks later. No signs of a struggle. Her belongings untouched. A neighbor had found the front door open, a single chair placed in the center of the main room, facing the staircase. There were no other details. I wrote down the name, Lenora Bennett. That name hadn't appeared anywhere else in relation to the building. I called my friend Dylan, who worked in real estate records. He owed me a favor. By evening, he had something. Lenora didn't own the building. She leased it from an anonymous trust based out of Salem. And before her, the property had sat vacant for years after a brief life as a children's clinic. Dylan asked if I was thinking of moving. I told him no, and ended the call. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not deeply. Not without slipping back into that place, the stone stairs, the photographs, the low light. This time, I saw someone else in the hallway behind me. A woman in a long coat, face obscured by shadows, standing still near the top of the stairs, watching. I didn't turn around. I kept walking. I woke up with my feet cold, as if I'd been standing on tile. The hardwood floor felt normal again under my hands. I started hearing a faint hum in the apartment during the quiet hours. Not from appliances, not electrical. A low, constant tone, like something old and distant. I pressed my ear against the closet door. The hum was stronger there. The floor felt warmer beneath my hands. As I pulled back, I noticed a mark along the baseboard. A shape, half worn away. A circle etched into the wood. Inside it, faded lines forming symbols I didn't recognize. The next morning, I found a message on the bathroom mirror. It wasn't written in steam or marker. It looked like condensation had gathered around the letters, forming the words in negative space. The message was short. You heard it too. I stood there for a long time, just staring, then wiped it away and left the apartment. I stayed at a friend's place that night. I didn't tell them everything, just said my place felt off. They didn't ask more. Back home the next day, nothing had moved. Nothing new appeared. The silence felt heavier though, the kind that settles into your chest and makes you second guess every sound. I began recording audio at night. Placed my phone near the closet. For 3 nights, nothing but static. On the 4th night, I caught something different. It started just past 2 a.m. The recording captured the hum again, then 3 short taps, then a pause, then a whisper, low and slow, barely audible beneath the static, a single word. Below. I listened to that section again and again, slowed it down, enhanced the volume, always the same word, same voice, below. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat near the closet, phone in hand, light off, waiting. Just before dawn, I heard the floorboard shift. A low sound, like a breath, from under the door. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I know I will. Because Leah's voice is next. I've heard it in my dreams. She's still calling, not in fear. She wants me to follow, and I think I will. By the 5th night, the recording stopped picking up the hum. No more whispers, no more tapping sounds, just silence, stretching longer than usual, as if something had pulled back waiting. I walked through the apartment more carefully now, watching for subtle changes. The circle near the closet baseboard was still visible, but something else had appeared beside it. A second shape. Painter. Still forming. I called Marin, someone I used to know from university. She had studied folklore and symbols, specializing in regional histories. She lived a few hours north. When I mentioned the design I found, her voice shifted. Not fear, but interest. She said she'd seen something similar in a collection of estate records from southern Oregon. Symbols used in spiritual warding practices, mid-century, specific to this region. I sent her a picture. She asked me not to do anything else to it, not to disturb it. Said she'd drive down the next day. I barely slept that night. Not because of fear, but because the apartment felt quiet in a way that didn't feel natural. The pipes never creaked. The floors didn't groan. It felt like everything was holding still. Marin arrived around noon. She carried an old binder and a camera. Her presence made the space feel different. Not safer, exactly, but less charged. We examined the symbols together. She said the second shape seemed to be forming on its own. No one had carved it. It wasn't etched. The wood had darkened in those places naturally. Or unnaturally. The markings weren't identical to any she'd seen, but they were close enough to something used as a seal, a kind of boundary meant to contain rather than repel. I asked what it was meant to keep in. She didn't answer directly, just flipped to a page in her binder and pointed to a rough sketch. The heading above it read, "The Watcher Beneath." Notes beside it referenced a belief, held by early settlers in the valley, that certain places held energy not meant to be disturbed. Beneath homes, beneath root cellars, even under foundations. She said the stories weren't about ghosts. They were older, quieter, persistent. She placed a small salt line across the base of the closet and left me with a few talismans. Not for protection, she said, but to mark the space, to let whatever was below know it had been noticed. That night, I dreamt of the hallway again. The woman in the coat was gone. In her place stood a figure much taller, its face obscured by light this time, not shadow. And behind it, the staircase descended farther than I'd ever seen it. I awoke to the sound of my own voice. I'd been speaking in the dream. I didn't remember what I said, only that my throat was dry and my heart was racing. I checked the phone recording. Nothing but soft, static. But this time, in the final seconds, there was a sudden change. A crackling sound, followed by a single breath. Not mine. Then silence. The next morning, the second symbol on the floor was complete. I kept the lights on during the day, stayed out as much as possible. I took my laptop to a cafe and looked again at the building's ownership. Still, the trust based out of Salem. I found no phone number, just a P.O. box. I wrote a letter. Asked if any records existed from previous tenants. Asked if they'd ever had complaints about structural noise. I mailed it without much hope. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, I stood near the closet again. This time, I opened the door slowly. Inside, the air felt colder. I pushed aside boxes and shoes. The floor creaked. I pressed on one of the boards. It gave slightly beneath my weight. I knelt down and felt around the edges. No obvious latch, no handle. But the wood was thinner here. A seam ran through the center. I didn't open it. Not yet. That night, the message on the mirror returned. Not written, but there. This time, it wasn't a sentence. It was a name. Lenora. The same name from the record. The woman who vanished. Beneath it, a date. The 12th of October. The next morning was the 12th of October,